Okay.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Hey,
Hi.
how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. How's your morning been?
It's been great. How about yourself?
It's good.
You feeling all better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got some sleep last night
Good.
and feeling good. How was your night?
It was good. I went to go sign up my kids
Yeah.
because we had just moved here, so I went to the rec center.
Yeah.
You had to go and bring your bill to show
Yeah.
that you live there. So then I signed them up for summer ball, softball, but they've never played t-ball. The tryouts is today at 1 for my daughter, so then we had to go to Dick's and get a glove and a softball. So it was a long night. My husband was working, so.
Has she played t-ball before?
They never played any.
Oh, wow.
That,
First time?
they've only done soccer, so she's trying out today at 1. So we'll see how it goes.
Good luck to her.
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Sorry, I'm so behind. There's no men's
No, it's
restroom on this
okay.
floor. Really not very many at all. And
Hi, how
Hello
are
again.
you?
How are you?
Hi.
See you guys.
Nice to see you.
Let's see, where are you from?
I'm the head of school at Crossroads College Preparatory School.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes.
You
I'm
are.
from Brewer May School in Chesterfield, Mass.
And in the
Oh, I've
city
heard
of
that.
Yeah. Cool.
I used to teach at Landmarks.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're in from Mass.
Oh, yeah, from that. We talked a little bit on the bus. Yeah. That's far from Meadowbrook.
Yeah.
Do you like, I've never been to St. Louis, but I've always wanted to see the arch.
Yeah, it's a big travel up.
Yes.
I love the Petra format.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
really.
That's
So
good.
It's like
brave.
a faculty
Yeah.
seminar.
Have you?
I want to.
Yeah.
I really like,
I like it.
I think, look at all those rubber duckies. I'm
I
so
know.
sorry. I'm
Yeah.
suddenly
The
just.
duck is a theme.
Oh,
in the
wow.
But
classroom.
it's an interesting, I think a lot about not only the content of justice work, but the method, and it is
Yeah.
a way of making sure that there is, that space is taken up in the same way.
Right.
And it's interesting to me to note
Nice.
who would compromise the format.
Yeah, it's true.
And so,
I left a little bit
which
early.
is
Did
not a
everyone?
criticism, it's just an
Oh, right.
observation, but I think it's an interesting way to make sure we all have the same amount of space and
Right.
time and method.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
No, it's
interesting to me.
impressive.
Yeah.
It really was.
And I keep thinking, maybe I should do that for my graduation speech, although they probably wouldn't want me to speak for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Or I speak.
Right.
So it's, I missed the beginning part of it because I was late, but how,
So it's 20 slides, 20 seconds each. So I think it ends up being 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Alright.
yeah, it was pretty impressive. Some people were pretty much aligned with the slides, but even so, there's like an accountability piece because the slides are moving on.
Yes.
And when they
No
end,
choice.
so you kind of have to move with them. All right, we're a tiny group, and I don't have a clicker, so what I might ask you all to do, if you don't mind, is
Yeah, of
move
course.
up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
You're welcome.
Up here?
Yeah, we can just go around here.
Do you need a clicker?
I think I'm all right.
Okay, because I can try to go get one.
Nah, it's all right. So, we'll start here. So my name, for those of you who haven't met yet, is Alethea White. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships at the Meadowbrook School. So Meadowbrook is a pre-K to 8th grade school located in Weston, which is about 15 minutes outside of Boston. I'll talk a little bit more about the contents of the school, but we serve about 300 students, so that breaks down to about a grade, one class per grade in the lower school, and then we graduate on average a class of 45. So we're pretty small, and that's really intentional to our mission. And so the purpose of this workshop is really, I've been really inspired to hear from other schools about kind of the breadth and depth of their programming as it relates to the external community. And I know some of us may be thinking, wow, that's really great, but what do we do and where do we start if our school, if we didn't walk into a school environment that already had those kinds of partnerships established, or where there was already a culture where the administrators and faculty all feel like this is a place that we really want to invest time and resources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my background and how I'm starting to do some of that work at Meadowbrook, and then hopefully it can just be a conversation that we can have among ourselves. Since we're a small group, it would be really helpful for me if we could really quickly, and I'll hold this to about a minute each, if we could just talk a little bit about ourselves, our where we work, our role at the school. So if it isn't like explicitly clear how that connects to public purpose work, it'd be great if you could share that. And just telling me a little bit about what you're hoping to get from this session, and as specific as you'd like to be. So if there's a conversation you're hoping to have with someone, if there's a program you have an idea for, if there's something that exists that you want to strengthen or reestablish, you know, as much as you want to share, anything, that'd be great.
Please.
Okay, well, I'm Catherine Komar, and I am not teaching currently. I have 4 kids, and 3 of them go here, and I'm just, my youngest is in preschool, and he's going to be going to kindergarten in 2 years, so I'm just kind of getting back into this and figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. So, yeah, I'm just
How old are
here
your
to get
kids?
knowledge. 10, 7, 6, and 3. So, yes, but I used to be a special ed teacher and a reading specialist, and I just kind of want to, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do something kind of different, but I really am liking this, so I just decided to sign up since it was here.
Excellent, great. Excellent.
Awesome.
It's been great.
My name is Diego Velasquez. I'm fairly new to school in Palo Alto, California.
Okay.
Castellana School. It's an all-girls school too, as well as this school. And so I work in communications, but the group that I work is called the A Center, which is Awareness, Compassion, and Engagement. So we kind of handle all the partnerships for local and globally relationships.
Okay.
And I'm going to be leading, as a site director, a partnership that we have with a program called Peninsula Bridge. And it's very similar to the Aspire program. So we work with other different private schools in the area, and because we are a lone girls school, we only take like the rising 5th grade girls, a group of 35 girls. And just, they're, highly academically students, and we want to give them and show them that, independent school opportunity. So definitely here for ideas and see how.
Minute timer.
Yeah, and see how, and see how you guys, what I can take back and what can apply. Like the idea always is to grow the program, and hopefully we can get, right now the number of the students that applied from that program to get into our school is very small, probably like 3 out of like 35 every year. And we wanna see what we can improve.
Okay, so the hope is perhaps that this program could be a pipeline for your side.
Either for all of the, because like I said, there's like 6 different independent schools. And I don't mind them applying to anyone. Yeah, it's just I want them to see that that's an option.
Opportunity. That's great.
My name is Jason Heiser, and I'm the head of school
Awesome.
at Crossroads College Prep in St. Louis, Missouri. We're actually in the city of St. Louis. And we're small. I have 220 students over 6th grade, 7 through 12. And so I took the job on the condition that I could teach a class. I teach one literature class, which is awesome. So I'm at the design level of the work, and I still touch the teaching in the classroom, which is really excellent. And I am here because I worry about partnerships that we have that are not mutually beneficial. So lots of places will take the work of the young people and not provide any teaching on the other end, or they will come to the school and provide something for a fee, or and then they will not take feedback from the kids. And so I really push back on the justice of just taking it because they're young and they're willing to do service work. So I'm trying to figure out how do we have relationships that are mutually beneficial, where we are teaching and learning and supporting one another in a way that doesn't involve the exchange of money, and in a way that honors the time and effort and opinions and good ideas of the young people in my school.
Perfect. Oh, wow.
I often give myself a minute to speak at school because I'm a talker.
My name's Dave. I teach history, government, and journalism at a small private school outside Boston. I got interested in this program. I actually reported on this program for an article I wrote last year. And then I have another article coming out shortly about it. And the more I learn about it, the more I want to bring partnerships to my school. And we're also centrally located right by the train in Colby's Heath.
Right.
As you know. So, and it's great that you're nearby, so I can tap you as a resource hopefully. So.
And that was the goal, right? So that we could get a sense,
Yeah.
not only would I get a sense of what would be helpful to talk about, but that we all could get a sense of where our strengths and challenges are. And the hope is that when we leave this space, we will have a network of colleagues nationally that we could call and say, this thing's really working, this thing's not working, what are you seeing, etc.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my own background and experiences, how it connects to my work at Meadowbrook, and then hopefully there'll be enough time for us to dig into thinking about our own institutions and what it looks like there. So this actually, I have a little arrow, because that's my 8th grade self. So I'm originally from New York City, I'm from Brooklyn. And my first experience with a public-private partnership was actually being a student in one. So as we think about the programs that we're trying to establish, I thought about it from the perspective of being a student. So Prep for Prep, and there are other national programs that have similar models, so there might be something in your own area that is similarly situated. So Prep for Prep is a program that works with 5th graders and 7th graders in New York City, and it helps with placement into independent schools in New York City, starting in the 7th grade, or boarding schools along the East Coast in 9th grade, which is what I did. And so it's a partnership between essentially families, schools, and independent schools. And I think what has worked for it over, I think it's over 3 decades old at this point, I think what's worked is what you guys were talking about in terms of the transparency of the program and the mutual beneficiary of the program. Everyone's clear on what everyone is trying to achieve. So independent schools are participants because they are trying to increase representation of Black or Hispanic students particularly, but also Asian students into their school. I think what's been really interesting to think about for this model is the fact that they've gotten public schools on board. And that was challenging because a lot of public schools were saying, well, look, you are trying to recruit some of our top performing students. Like, what do we get out of this? But what I think has been really interesting is that the public sector, as a public schools and prep and independent schools, have essentially said, we're going to leverage our resources for what's in the best interest of our students. And if there are students in our school who, yes, are high performing, but perhaps we're not serving as best as we could, how can we work together to kind of expose them to another option, whether or not they choose to participate. And so this group of students, we were in 8th grade, we knew where we were going to be placed for 9th grade, and this is kind of the basis on which I place all of my work, because I know what it's like to be in the community that's going to be served, and I know what it's like to transition into the community that's trying to do the serving. And so I always try to remember what it was like on both sides of that coin, and I think that really helps my perspective in the work and the conversations that I am able to have on both sides. So one of the things I'd like us to talk about a little bit is, I think as being a self-selected group at this conference, we might think we have the answer, but I'd just be interested to hearing a little bit about what do we think, if there is a public purpose of education for independent schools, what is it? How do we define public purpose? And then how do we communicate to different constituents within our communities that this is something that they should be engaged in? So I'm just interested to hear what your thoughts were.
I am second year in independent schools, and I'm 18 years a public school educator, so this is something that I struggled with in terms of how I chose the school that I would switch contexts for. So I would say I would say yes. And perhaps it's because the school that I have is committed in ways that some of my peer schools are not. I'm not even answering the question.
That's fine.
And yet I'm here partially to get some definition around what that is. I talk a lot about the city being our campus. We're on a small campus, we're an upcycled grocery store, and so we often have to take our students the metro T's, like a block away. And so how do we get them into, and yet I want it to be more than just we are going into communities and giving something.
Right.
And so it was very easy for us, for example, to go into Ferguson after protests and try to clean up, and it was sort of an insertion in, but not really. It's very easy for us to tour, and so I want to figure out how do we do this in a way that is honoring. When you said something, I was part of the that was being served, and I try to help us reach out in not a way that is so privileged.
Right.
We will help you, and we will count you. And I just feel like that is very white and patriarchal. I'm not quite sure how to figure that out. That was over a minute, probably.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I'm not exactly sure how to answer this, but there's a few ways in which I try to approach this question. I teach in New England, which has some of the highest tuition costs in the country. My school's over 45K, and there are some that are even closer to 50K.
Yeah.
I think we're pricing ourselves out of being able to include different kinds of people from socioeconomic backgrounds, and if schools like mine, as great as I think it is, don't engage with the community, they'll be even more views elitism targeted against independent schools. And so I think we have an obligation to say, no, we care about all students, not just those that can afford the $45K in tuition. And we're going to show you that we care by doing this and that and the other. In terms of what should it be, I think there were great examples this morning about partnerships that could happen. I know that the one that is around me that I happen to know most about is at Milton Academy in Milton, Mass, where they have a Saturday course where private and public school teachers work together on every Saturday. They have 4 6-week sessions a year. And they teach courses from science, robotics, acting, you name it, they have it there. And they've been incredibly successful, not just engaging students, but also parents, which in terms helps with graduation rates and what have you. And it's supported by the superintendent of Milton. It's very low cost, and if you can't afford it, it doesn't cost anything at all, and it doesn't cost Milton really much at all either. So.
I think and again, I've only been into this for like 6.5 months, but what I see is that sometimes we overlook the value for the independent school students. I think so in this program that I'm going to be part of, we're going to recruit like a lot of TAs, like probably 20 students there in high school that they're going to help, and do electives, and they're going to design curriculum, and they're going to be exposed to the other side too. So then when they leave the school, they also want to do something within the community, and they're aware of it. Our schools also has a very high tuition cost, so a lot of those students, they are never exposed to anything else, and like in the area, East Palo Alto, in our neighborhood and all that. So we try to do activities where we go to their schools, and we both learning. It's not just that we are trying, like you were saying, like, oh, here is, the beautiful us, and it's like both ways, and I think you have to keep that always going because they're, gaining that much, so.
Right. Yeah. So I think the point about, so I'm going to share my definition, it's not trademarked anywhere, but I think the educator in me wanted to hear first what was in the room before I shared what I thought. And I think where we are at Meadowbrook right now is at best at a public purpose point, and I'd love to see us grow to a partnership point, and so I'm going to talk about what I think it would take for us to get there. So here's how I think about public purpose. I think about it as a relationship that functions in the absence of these arbitrary community boundaries, right, to ensure that everyone have educational access. And what I mean by that is kind of to your point, Dave, which is instead of saying, we are Meadowbrook and you are whoever, what we're saying is like, I think that all of the children in the Boston metro area are our children. Yeah. Some of them happen to be able to be born into families that can afford and choose to spend upwards of $30,000 a year on education. Some of them cannot or do not choose to, right? And if we say we are a school, for example, my school says we're a school committed to STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics education, right? If we are trying to build a generation of leaders in that area, well, we have to be honest about the fact that some of the greatest scientists, mathematicians, and artists don't go to Meadowbrook, right? And so how can we leverage our resources to ensure that we are really creating that kind of community, whether or not they go to our school? And so that's where I think the service piece starts to go away. Instead of saying, oh, these poor, unfortunate children that can't come to Meadowbrook, we start saying no, right? We are committed to all the children in this area. And some of them, for good reasons, choose not to come here or cannot come here. So how are we going to make sense of the resources that we have available, whether they are human, whether they are facilities, and make those spaces more accessible to other people. And so that's what we're thinking about. So here's a little graphic that I've thought about. So I think of public purpose as kind of a euphemism almost for the tradition of community service, right? Which says, here are the things that we have. Here are the things I assume you need, or you've maybe told me you need. So I have the soil, maybe you have the plot, and I'm going to start the work for you, and you're going to benefit from it. And I think there's a time and place for that work. I think there are really communities in which people are okay with saying, you know what, the kind of relationship that I would like to have is really resource-based. I worked in a charter school in the Bronx in Hunts Point, which is known as one of the poorest congressional districts in the country. And there were, in our school, there were some relationships that we had where we were clear that what we need are resources. We need you to place our students in internships in corporate places in the city. We need meals. We just need things, and we were okay with that. So it's not to place a judgment on which is better, but what I'd love to see, particularly my institution, get to is saying, I have the soil, you have the seed, we both want to grow a plant. How can we work together to do that, right? I'm recognizing what I have. So I think number one is that whatever work I try to do, I try to ensure that each interaction leaves each party with dignity. So I'm going to give you an example. We work with a school that's in a neighboring town as ours. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Weston, but for those of you who don't know, and I didn't know this because I'm from New York, so when I moved to the Boston area, people would say, what school are you going to work at? And I'd say Meadowbrook, and they'd say, where's that? And I'd say Weston, and they'd say Weston, right? There was this coded language there that meant Weston is affluent and mostly white, and I didn't know that. So I learned that pretty quickly. We neighbor two towns that socioeconomically have a lower kind of median income. So Weston is one of the most affluent suburbs in America and certainly in Massachusetts. And we border two towns that are racially and socioeconomically more diverse. And there is a school in one of the towns that caters to families who are coming from Spanish-speaking countries, so who are immigrating, who work with low-income, typically mothers, and there's a preschool that teaches the children English, and then the school works with the mothers to help them learn English and help them navigate kind of the American educational system. And we had a relationship where our third graders would go maybe twice a year, and the third graders would come up with things that they thought would be helpful to work with the students. And one year we asked the students, what is it that you would like to do? And they said, we talked about how important reading is, so we would love to make bookshelves and decorate them, and it'll be great. And so we said, oh, this is a really great interdisciplinary experience. They can build bookshelves in woodworking, they can paint them in art, they can maybe donate some books, and it'll be great. So we deliver these bookshelves, and I found out later that the organization didn't tell the teachers, but what actually happened was most of the families don't have either space in their homes to put a bookshelf, don't have enough books to need a bookshelf, don't have cars to transport bookshelves, right? So we came up with this idea that in our silos it made so much sense. It was brilliant. The kids were so excited. And never once did anyone ask the partner, this is useful, this is interesting, this is helpful. And not only was it a burden to try to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with these bookshelves, but it actually made some people feel worse, that it wasn't something that was going to be useful to them. And that to me is an interaction that doesn't leave people with dignity, if that makes sense. I also think we tend to approach communities from a deficiency model, right? We look at a community and say, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have this, you should have this. And we don't say, your community has this. You have a really strong network of communication. You have community centers, whether they're religiously based or community-oriented based, where people are sharing information and sharing resources, and we don't do that in our community. You have spaces where you are managing 30 children at a time, and we at most manage 17, so maybe there's something we could learn from you, right? So what if we entered community saying, instead of saying, we need to give you everything, what do you have and what do I have and how can we work together? So this is Meadowbrook. So this is where I work. And this is some information. So I think about the work that I get to do and the programs that I've worked to start as kind of a mix of the perfect storm. There were a lot of things that were happening that I walked into that allowed for me to kind of push the culture a little bit, right? If there weren't these things happening, I think it would have been a lot more challenging. And some of the things that worked for me were having administration on board and being committed to this work, and having faculty allies. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is our kind of racial demographics at Meadowbrook in terms of faculty and students. The 30% students of color number is certainly up from where we've been in the past, but when we think about underrepresented groups, which for our school would be students who identify as Black or Hispanic, we're at 7% over the school, which in some grades means at best you have one student, or in some grades you have no students who identify that way. In the 2005 strategic plan, we had one African American male in the entire school. And so we had our accreditation, I believe it was maybe 8 years ago. And one of the things the visiting team said was, hey, you're in Boston, like you're in the Boston metro area. Your school demographics don't at all match the Boston metro area, so figure it out. And so with that, there was the board creation of the Assistant Director of Multicultural Enrollment position, which was what my position used to be named before I asked it to be named what it's named now, which is Director of Community Partnerships. And so what they said, what we talked about in the interview was, Lethea, what ideas might you have for trying to get a community of people, whether it's geographically, racially, socioeconomically, who haven't been represented in our school community in the past to come here? And I said, well, I need you to tell me, what work have you done in those communities that you'd like to recruit from that would make people want to come here? And the question to that answer wasn't very impressive. So my response was, I know we have a great educational kind of curriculum. I know we have a really lovely campus. But if you're going to ask for parents to have their 4-year-olds be trailblazers, essentially, by being the first of something, right? The first student from a certain town, the first student of color in that grade, then there has to be something more than this that's attracting them. People want to see a commitment to real work that isn't always about, I think there is a good, I think one of the points we sell a lot is that it's an enriching opportunity for our students to engage with other people, which I think is important, but also